All right, cool. So just get this on here. All right. So who's heard of Python? And who's never programmed in it before? Okay, awesome. So hopefully you guys learned something today, and the people who have, maybe you'll get a refresher on some things, because it is pretty basic, but we'll try to cover the basics of Python and then write a simple program. So let's get right into it. So what is Python? The definition from python.org is that it's an interpreted, object-oriented, high-level programming language. So we can kind of step through that. Interpreted meaning instead of the code being compiled, it's interpreted by Python. And that basically just means that it's not being compiled into machine code before it's ran. Object-oriented, if you've been through like COMMAS 227, you've talked about object-oriented programming and what an object is. We won't be talking about that today, but that's, Python is object-oriented. And then high-level, basically meaning high-level abstraction, so you're not dealing with the difficulties of like a more low-level programming language such as C. That's one thing that makes Python nice is the syntax is pretty simple and quick to learn, which is why I think it's a really good first language for someone that has never programmed before. But it's good for just about anything. You can do so much with it, it's kind of ridiculous. You can do scripting and automating different tasks. You can write web apps with it, you can write full programs with it, and we'll look at kind of what people have done with Python at the end of the presentation. So yeah, how do you get started? Like I said, this is geared kind of towards people who have programming language knowledge in a different language. So having that basic understanding of like what a variable is, what a loop is, object-oriented programming, but don't know what Python is. So first thing we need to do is install Python on our machine so that we can debug and run the code and get feedback from the interpreter if our code is right or not. And going more into that, so a lot of you may have seen the difference between like seeing Python 2 and Python 3. Sometimes they're both on the same box, and basically what does that mean? So for somebody who's more advanced in using Python to develop like pretty serious applications, it may matter to you. As beginners, it doesn't really matter, and the guideline that I found that you should go by is basically that the Python 2 is the legacy version, and Python 3 is kind of the next generation. So we're just going to be going with Python 3 today, and that's what all the code will be in, so Python 3. So I'm going to be using Ubuntu 16.04. That comes with Python 3 in a VM, and to basically get it, you run sudo apt-get update and upgrade to make sure you have the latest version. You could check it by running Python 3 -V for the version, and on my box it shows that the output is Python 3.5.2. And then if you don't have it, you can do sudo apt-get install Python 3, and we'll get it. So I'll just show you real quick here. Don't want to go into that yet. There we go. Okay, so I'll open a terminal here, and we can just type Python 3-version, and it shows the version, so that means I have it installed and we're good to go. Okay, so virtual environments, we're not going to be using virtual environments today, but it's something that if you want to get serious with Python, like managing different projects with it, virtual environments are great for that. So basically it's a way for you to isolate different projects in that you can have different versions of not only Python, but the packages that you work with Python with. So if you wanted to use Python 2 for some reason for one project and Python 3 dot something for another project, you can isolate those and have them all in their own virtual environment. And then I've included a link, so I'll put these slides up if you guys want to look into virtual environments later. They're pretty common on servers and anywhere that's hosting a lot of different projects that deal with programming and applications and stuff like that. So let's write the hello world together, and then we'll kind of step through like what it means. It's very simple, as you'll see. So has everyone been able to get that wants to Python installed? Is anyone having issues running the Python 3 dash version and seeing that it's installed. Okay, so if we go into the terminal here, I'm just going to, let's see where I am. I'm going to just make a directory. We'll just call this code IASG, and then we'll cd into that. And so what I can do is whatever text editor you want to use, I'll be using Vim today. So I'll just Vim into a new file. So we'll say hello_world.py. So py is the extension for Python files. So this first line that I'm going to be typing is known as the shebang line. And so basically what that is telling, because there's different ways you can run the Python code, and we'll show you that in just a sec. But that's basically telling the operating system where the interpreter is located at. Okay, and then for hello world, it's really easy. We can use a function called print and just give it an argument of a string that's encapsulated in quotation marks. So hello world, and we'll close that off. No semicolons needed at the end of files, so we'll right quit that out. And then if we want to run it, there's two different ways we can do that. So you could type Python 3 or Python if you're using Python 2. So Python 3 hello world, tab complete that, hit enter, and you see that it outputs hello world. So we've got our hello world done. The other way we can do it, because we told the operating system where the interpreter is, we can, so if I do list out the attributes for this, you can see that it's not executable, but we can make it executable by doing cmod a plus x. So that basically adds the executable for all users, or all the user group. And then we can specify the file. And then if we run ls-la again, we can see that it's now executable. It shows up green. And so we can just run it like any other normal script or executable by doing / and then the file name. And then if we hit enter, it does the same thing. So pretty much the same thing as Python 3 and running it. But you do, in order to get it the second way that we did it, you have to specify the shebang line at the top so the operating system knows where to look for the interpreter. Okay, so that's hello world. Let's go back to the slides here real quick. Basically, we covered this here. And then breaking it down, so yeah, you've got the shebang line, tells the operating system where to find the interpreter, and then this, not a method, a function, sorry. This is the print function, standard function within Python that accepts pretty much anything that has data to be print out to the console. In this case, we're using a string as the argument, and it just prints it out in our terminal window. Okay, so variables in Python. This is one of the reasons that Python is so nice, because you don't have to worry about defining a type for the variables. So you basically just give it a name. You just think of it as a label, and you are assigning a value to that label. So I can assign a string to var_name1 as my variable name, and I can assign, a string hello to it. I can also, in the very next line, assign an integer value, and there's not going to be any errors. Now, if you try to do that in C or Java, you're going to have problems. So if we try to print that out, it's going to print 50 because it just worries about the last thing that it was assigned. And then some naming rules for Python. It can't start with a number, so I couldn't do like to_var. It can have underscores, numbers, and letters in it as long as it doesn't start with a number. And then it can't have any spaces, so it's got to be all one word, if you will. So. Okay, so there's two primary loops within Python. The one on the left here is a while loop, and the syntax, again, if this gets out of the way. Okay, the syntax is pretty simple for that. Basically, you do while, and then before the colon is what it's going to stop on or check for. So in this case, we set a variable a equals to 3, and then we see we're going to keep that loop going until a or while a is greater than 0. So basically what this does is prints off a, the value of a, and then subtracts 1 from it. So it'll basically go until a is greater than 0. If I got rid of that bottom line, it'd be an infinite loop, which you can absolutely do if you wanted to. On the right, we have a for loop. So for loop's a little bit different than you might have typically seen in like Java or C++ or anything like that. So basically, the syntax is just a little bit different. We're taking a variable a, and then we are cycling through a range. So you're defining a range that the for loop is going through. In this case, it's the integer values from 0 to 10. So I know in some other programming languages, sometimes you see like for, ints, like in Java, I believe, int I equals 0, I is less than 4, I plus plus. In this case, it's a bit different in Python in that the range is kind of taking place of that line, and you're cycling through that range. Does that make sense? Anybody confused on how that works? Okay. And then for this one, we basically,
so like when you have while a greater than 0 or for a, like if you didn't initialize it before that, would it initialize it?
So you're saying if I didn't do anything like with a, like if I just did not have this line here?
Yeah.
So a would not, I want to say that might throw an error because it wouldn't have anything to check a against. Like a would just not exist. And if a doesn't have a value assigned to it, the while loop would never know basically how to perform the loop because there would be nothing assigned to a. But I don't know exactly what would happen if you did try to run that. So that's a good question though.
Would it work for the for loop?
What's up?
Would it work for the for loop?
So yes, I believe it would work for the for loop. Yep. Okay, so conditional is basically your if else, if, else if, else. So it's kind of different in Python. Again, not that difficult. I assigned a equal to the string chicken, and if a double equals, that's pretty standard. You're comparing those strings, not assigning it. Comparing the value for a to the string turkey. So if a is equal to the value of turkey, and then you've got your colon, and underneath that indented, you've got a print statement. The elif, or basically else if in Python, that's how you do that. And then, so you can have as many of the elifs as you want. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I have a friend named Elif, so we're just going to go with that. And then at the end, you can end it with an else statement. So if you wanted to just do an if statement, you could do that. If you just wanted to do an if-else statement, you can also do that. I just included the one with all three for brevity here. Any questions on that? Do the conditionals make sense, if-else? Okay. Okay, so functions in Python, kind of equivalent to methods in some other programming languages, and functions in other languages. So if you don't know, they're basically blocks of code that you can call and reuse instead of having to write the same thing over and over again. So it can become very handy, especially when you start defining classes and using the object-oriented abilities that Python does have. So in this program that we have here, we have a function here. So you start it by def, and then the name of the function, and then any arguments that you have here, and then whatever is going to be performed in the function is going to be indented underneath. So in this case, we are converting the mile per hour inputted speed to meters per second by just using this, not arbitrary, but value that I found from a conversion online. So speed equals to itself times that converting value, and then it's going to go ahead and return the new value. So I input a speed in mile per hour, and then I initialize a new variable to take in the new value that that our function gives back, and then I print that all out. So I'll go ahead and run that just to show what it looks like here. We're going to go ahead and minimize that real quick. I should not have enabled transparency so you can actually see. All right, so I have that just in Python code here. So if we believe it is the functions, if I've been that, oops. Yep, so there's a code there. Right now I'm giving it this value of like 2009 something. So if I go ahead and run that, we can do the Python 3-way, and it prints out that. So one thing I did want to point out is we are using another standard function. So round will basically round a number. It'll cut it off, round it up or down. And then this str will convert an integer value, or pretty much any value that's not a string, into a string so that you can print it out if you wanted to do that. Okay, so that is how the functions work. Any questions on functions? Okay. So like I said, Python does have the whole object-oriented ability and classes. I don't want to hold you guys up too long, but so that is a possibility and will probably be a requirement if you're working in more complex applications. And I've also included a link. The docs.python.org is pretty awesome to learn from. They do a really good job with their documentation. So you can always check that out after if you're interested. Okay, so starting to get into doing something actually interesting with Python. So there's this package. Basically, packages are things that you can import into a program that you're working on that allows you to access functions that other people have written. And in this case, subprocess allows you to do things with the OS level, including running shell commands and getting their output. So what this program does is we're doing the import subprocess, so we import that package in so that we can access the functions to it, and then we do we sign a variable equal to the package.p open, and that allows us to input basically a shell command. And we set shell equal to true so that it acts like it's actually running the shell command, and then we get back the output of that and we print that out. So I can show you what that looks like real quick here. Everything just loves to get in my way. All right. So that one was under scripting. So as you saw and I'll go back to it here, but I had the ls-la command to list out the whatever's in the current directory plus the attributes for it, and we were able to print out what that returned. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what's possible in terms of getting started with scripting, that we can basically run these commands through Python. So, I mean, you can imagine starting to automate tasks by making, Python programs to do these commands for you, whether that be updating your system or pretty much whatever your imagination or whatever you're frustrated with and don't want to do yourself. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what is possible with the scripting. And of course, obviously, more complex things are always a possibility, which is what I'll go into next here. So this slide that I have just kind of shows some of the things that are made with Python. iScore is in the background, so if you're in the CDC, you definitely saw that. That's built on Django, which is a web framework for Python web applications. Another one kind of related but smaller, more micro, is Flask. That's another popular one. Spotify has, I don't know if all of it, but parts built on Python. And then also that guy kind of animated character there. So that's actually a program, if you guys haven't heard of it, Blender is a open source 3D animation software completely built in Python. And it has been said to rival, if not excel in some areas, actual like paid professional 3D animation, rendering, modeling, lighting programs. So, you know, like the title says, the possibilities are endless. You can pretty much do whatever you want with Python. Although it is a high-level programming language, you don't really have too many restrictions in that case. And the cool thing is it's easy to learn, it's easy to get involved and get started actually writing programs with it. And there's not, you know, this high level of barrier to entry or anything like that, like a learning curve. And then I just posted a link there on their website. They've got even more just success stories of like things that people have built with Python and that have gone on to do really cool things. So if you're looking for ideas, you can always check that out. And yeah, so I will post the slide deck in the past presentation so you guys can take a look at this. And get started programming in Python because it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of things you could do with it. So does anybody have any questions at all about Python or anything? Okay, cool. So that's my beginner's night. I know it was quick, but if you do have any lingering questions later on, I'm always on Slack, so just hit me up. And like I said, the docs on Python's website are awesome, so you should check those out. Yeah, I think in terms of club meeting, that's all we have. I'll send out, if anybody wants to work on the NSA Codebreaker this weekend, I know some people have had conflicts, but I'll send out like a poll for that to see if anyone's interested, and maybe we meet up to work on that again now that the CDC is over. Like I said, we'll be doing that Halloween CTF, so keep that in mind. And besides that, I think that's it. Any cabinet have anything to say? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody, and we'll see you next week.